Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
Jonathan adjusted the collar of his shirt as the shuttle docked at the sprawling space station orbiting Earth. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and he stepped into the bustling hub of interstellar commerce. The station, a nexus for trade and diplomacy, buzzed with beings from numerous planets, each going about their business. As he navigated through the crowd, Jonathan's gaze was caught by the diversity around him. Tall, crystalline creatures from Chrysler, diminutive, nimble beings from Ybor, and many more. He reached the corporate sector where he would start his new role at Zentracorp, a renowned company known for its advanced technologies and diverse workforce. At the reception, a humanoid robot greeted him. "Welcome, Jonathan. Ms. Zara Talon will meet you shortly. Please follow the light path to conference room 6. "Thank you," Jonathan replied, following the illuminated panels on the floor that led him through sleek corridors. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves. The door to the conference room slid open, and Jonathan found himself face-to-face with Zara, his new boss. Zara was from Lyrian, her appearance strikingly different from humans, with iridescent skin that shimmered under the room's light and eyes that reflected a depth of wisdom and authority. "Jonathan, I'm pleased you made it here safely," Zara said, her voice melodic yet commanding. "I've reviewed your file extensively. Your experience in multi-species technology integration is going to be invaluable for us." "Thank you, Ms. Talon. I'm eager to contribute and learn," Jonathan replied, extending his hand. Zara nodded and gestured towards the seat. "As you're aware, Zentracorp prides itself on innovation and integration of diverse perspectives," Zara continued. "You'll be joining our team that's pioneering the development of a new communication device meant to operate across different biological and technological interfaces." Jonathan listened intently, his mind already racing with ideas. "I've always believed that true innovation stems from understanding diverse viewpoints. I'm looking forward to collaborating with the team." Zara smiled, her face lighting up in a way that softened her sharp features. "I like that approach. Let me introduce you to some of your key team members." She tapped on her device, and moments later, 2 more figures entered the room. The first was a human, about Jonathan's age, with a friendly smile. "I'm Marco, the software engineer. We'll be working closely together." They shook hands, and Jonathan felt reassured by the warm grip. Following Marco was another Lyrian, taller and with a more reserved demeanor. "This is Soren, our project's lead designer," Zara introduced. Soren nodded at Jonathan. "Your insights will be crucial as we adapt the device for use by non-humanoid species. It's a challenging aspect but critical for the project's success. I've done some preliminary work on adaptive interfaces. Maybe we can start by aligning our goals with the practical challenges we expect," Jonathan suggested, eager to dive into the technicalities. "That sounds like a plan," Marco chimed in. "Let's also schedule some time to review the existing framework. I believe your fresh perspective might just be what we need to solve a few persistent issues." Zara observed the exchange with a pleased expression. "I can see you're going to fit right in, Jonathan. Welcome aboard." "Thank you, Ms. Talon. I appreciate the warm welcome and I'm ready to get started," Jonathan responded, feeling his initial anxiety give way to anticipation and excitement. As the meeting continued, they discussed timelines, expectations, and the upcoming phases of the project. Jonathan felt a surge of pride and responsibility as he realized the significance of the work ahead. He was not just in a new job, but on the frontier of something that could redefine how different species communicated across the galaxy. The meeting concluded with plans for a team dinner, giving Jonathan a chance to bond further with his colleagues. As he left the conference room with Marco and Soren, discussing various technicalities of their project, Jonathan knew that joining Zentracorp was the beginning of a significant chapter in his life. In the weeks following his arrival at Zentracorp, Jonathan quickly acclimated to the rigorous pace of his new job. He spent countless hours collaborating with Marco and Soren, often extending discussions late into the station's artificial nights. One late evening, while reviewing schematics in the lab, Jonathan noticed Zara observing a holographic display, her expression more intense than usual. "Trouble with the interface projections, Zara?" Jonathan asked, approaching her workstation. Zara turned toward him, her eyes briefly flickering with a hidden emotion. It's not the projections, Jonathan. I'm trying to recalibrate my focus. There are personal complexities I must manage during this period. Jonathan remembered the whispers among his colleagues about the Lyrian mating season, a time when their leaders were said to experience intense emotional and physiological changes. If there's anything I can do to help with the project workload, please let me know. Actually, I could use a fresh perspective on the integration algorithm. It's been resisting my recent attempts to stabilize it, she replied, stepping aside to let him view the data. As Jonathan leaned in to examine the hologram, he and Zara unintentionally brushed hands. A spark of unexpected energy shot through him, and he noticed her catch her breath slightly. Sorry, Jonathan muttered, focusing back on the code. I see what you mean here. What if we adjust the frequency modulation here? It might provide the stability you're looking for. Zara looked on, nodding slowly. Show me what you have in mind. Working together, they tweaked the algorithm, discussing potential outcomes and adjustments. The atmosphere grew thick with concentration and unspoken questions. Eventually, Marco walked in, catching the tail end of their discussion. Making progress without me? He joked, setting down his tablet. Just some fine-tuning, Jonathan said, grateful for the interruption. Zara excused herself, mentioning a need to report their progress to the upper management. Once she left, Marco nudged Jonathan. So, how's the work atmosphere around the boss lately? Noticed anything interesting? Jonathan shrugged, avoiding direct eye contact. Zara's been under a lot of pressure, it seems. Pressure? Or is it the mating season? Marco asked, lowering his voice. It's a big deal for the Lyrians. Heard it can really amp up their emotions. Jonathan felt uncomfortable discussing it, but couldn't deny his curiosity. Is that why she's been so intense lately? Part of it, maybe, Marco replied. Just be careful, man. Interspecies dynamics can get complicated, especially now. The warning rang in Jonathan's ears long after Marco left. He couldn't help but feel an increased awareness of Zara's presence whenever she was near. The next day, Jonathan and Soren collaborated on integrating the algorithm into the prototype. As they worked, Jonathan relayed his and Zara's adjustments from the previous evening. Soren, always focused on details, nodded appreciatively. Your joint modifications might just solve our synchronization issue. As they progressed, Jonathan found himself more involved, more invested, not just in the project but also in understanding the complexities of Lyrian culture and Zara's unspoken challenges during her mating season. This deeper insight made him respect her even more, complicating his feelings as he strived to maintain professionalism in an increasingly complex work environment. A month into his tenure at Zentracorp, Jonathan had become deeply invested in the cultural nuances of his Lyrian colleagues. To better understand the social intricacies of Lyrian life, he initiated a cultural exchange group among his team members, which included not just Lyrians but beings from several different planets. The group met for the first time in one of the station's communal lounges, a spacious room with views of the star-strewn void outside. Jonathan, Marco, Soren, and a few others from various departments gathered around a large table, each bringing elements of their culture to share. As we're trying to integrate not just technologies but also our diverse perspectives, I thought this might help us work better together, Jonathan explained as he set down a digital projector displaying various human cultural artifacts. Marco, always eager to lighten the mood, joked, Hope everyone likes coffee and old Earth music because that's what I brought. Laughter filled the room, easing the initial stiffness. Soren, carrying a small holographic device, displayed patterns that shifted and danced in the air. This is a traditional Lyrian art form, using light and movement to convey emotions. It's something like your human dance, but more abstract. The group was fascinated, and the session quickly became an animated exchange of stories, traditions, and explanations of different social customs. When it was Zara's turn, she hesitated momentarily before activating her hologram, which illustrated the Lyrian mating season in a series of delicate, artistic images. The mating season is sacred to us, Zara began, her voice steady but revealing a hint of vulnerability. It's a time of heightened emotions and personal challenges. We value openness and understanding from our peers, as it can affect our interactions. Jonathan listened intently, realizing the weight of what Zara was sharing. Thank you for trusting us with this, Zara. It's important for us to understand all aspects of who we work with. The meeting continued, with each member sharing something unique about their heritage. As the evening wound down, Jonathan found himself alongside Soren, who seemed pensive. It's rare to see a leader like Zara open up about such personal aspects, Soren commented, his voice low. Jonathan nodded. I respect her more for it. It's not easy to balance such a powerful personal aspect of life with professional responsibilities. Indeed, Soren agreed. Your initiative today has helped bridge a gap. Understanding each other's backgrounds can only strengthen our team's synergy. As they cleaned up, Marco approached Jonathan with a grin. You know, I think you're onto something here. Seeing everyone tonight, sharing and laughing. I haven't felt this connected to the team before. It's the start, I hope, Jonathan said. If we're going to innovate, we need every advantage, including mutual understanding. Speaking of innovation, Marco added, pulling out his tablet, I've been tweaking the communication algorithms based on what we learned tonight. Want to take a look? Absolutely, Jonathan replied, energized by the productive and enlightening evening. They sat back down, poring over the new code, discussing how cultural insights might influence their technical work. Through these late-night coding sessions and cultural exchanges, Jonathan not only deepened his understanding of his colleagues, but also fostered a more inclusive and collaborative atmosphere. This new camaraderie was exactly what he hoped to achieve when he first proposed the idea. It was nearly a month after the cultural exchange initiative that Jonathan found himself working late with Zara on the final adjustments to the communication device. The lab was quiet, the only sounds being the soft hum of computers and their occasional murmurs as they discussed the nuances of the programming. Jonathan, can you help me understand this segment of the code? Zara asked, her tone more subdued than usual. She pointed to a line of code on the screen that integrated human linguistic patterns with Lyrian sensory inputs. Sure, Jonathan said, moving closer to look over her shoulder. He noticed her scent, a subtle and complex fragrance that seemed to draw him in. Clearing his throat, he focused on the screen. Here, we're translating the human verbal expressions to match Lyrian sensory feedback. It needs to be precise, or the device could misinterpret emotions. Zara nodded, her fingers brushing his as she scrolled through the document. I see. Your attention to detail is impressive. Their eyes met, and there was a charged silence, filled with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Zara spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan, I need to be honest with you about something. My recent distractions aren't just about the project. Jonathan's heart raced as he met her gaze. What do you mean? It's my mating season, Zara confessed, her face tinged with a shimmer that Jonathan now recognized as a blush. It affects us deeply, more than just physiologically. It makes us crave connection, and I find myself drawn to you, not just intellectually but personally. Jonathan felt a mix of surprise and elation. Zara, I'm not sure what to say. I felt something too, but I didn't think it was appropriate to. No, it's not appropriate, Zara interrupted, her expression serious. It's complicated, potentially problematic. I'm your supervisor, and we're from different species. But I needed you to know, because it's affecting my work and my interactions. Jonathan took a deep breath, considering his next words carefully. I appreciate your honesty, Zara, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about you outside of work. But you're right, it's complicated. What do you think we should do? Zara paused, her gaze falling to the floor before returning to his eyes. I don't have all the answers, Jonathan. Perhaps we should take some time to think about this, individually. We can't afford to make a rash decision that might impact our careers or the project. You're right, Jonathan agreed, feeling a pang of disappointment tempered by his respect for her professionalism. Let's take some time to think. We can revisit this conversation when we're both more certain of what we want and what is feasible. Zara nodded. Thank you, Jonathan, for understanding. As she turned to leave, Jonathan called out, Zara? She stopped and looked back. Whatever we decide, I want you to know that I respect you immensely, both as my boss and as a person. This project, working with you, has been one of the best experiences of my professional life. Zara's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. And you have been an unexpected joy in mine, Jonathan. Good night. Good night, Zara. As the lab doors slid shut behind her, Jonathan sat back, feeling the weight of their conversation. He knew the coming days would be filled with difficult decisions. But for now, he had work to finish, and he turned back to the computer, his mind buzzing with not just codes and algorithms but possibilities of what might come. Over the next few days, the tension between Jonathan and Zara was palpable. They maintained a professional demeanor, but their brief exchanges were charged with an undercurrent of their unspoken feelings. The rest of the team seemed oblivious, caught up in the excitement of nearing the project's completion. Jonathan found himself working later, partly to avoid the awkward moments when alone with Zara. One such evening, while deep in concentration, he didn't notice Marco entering the lab until his colleague clapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, Jonathan, burning the midnight oil again?" Marco asked, raising his eyebrows as he glanced around the empty lab. "Yeah, just trying to sort out some last-minute bugs in the system," Jonathan replied, minimizing the algorithm on his screen. "What brings you here so late?" Marco sat down, his face serious. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you. It's about you and Zara." Jonathan stiffened. "What about us?" "I mean, it's none of my business, but I've noticed some vibes. Look, I know Zara mentioned it's her mating season, and things might feel more intense. Just be careful, man. I've seen office romances go south, and I hate to see you get hurt." Jonathan sighed, rubbing his face. "I know, Marco. It's complicated. We're both aware of the risks. Nothing's happened." "Good to hear," Marco replied, patting Jonathan's back. "Just looking out for you. Anyway, need a hand with those bugs?" "Actually, yes," Jonathan said, grateful for the change in topic. They dove into the code, Marco offering fresh insights that helped Jonathan clear his mind and make progress. As they worked, the door slid open and Zara walked in, her expression unreadable. "I thought I might find you here," she said, looking from Marco to Jonathan. "How's the troubleshooting going?" "We're just sorting out the last few kinks," Marco answered, giving Jonathan a knowing look before excusing himself. "I'll leave you two to it." Once Marco left, an awkward silence fell over the room. Zara finally broke it. "Jonathan, about the other night?" "I've been thinking about it too," Jonathan interrupted, eager to clear the air. "Zara, whatever this is between us, it doesn't have to jeopardize our work or our careers." Zara nodded, walking over to where Jonathan was seated. "I agree. We need to keep things professional. But that doesn't stop how I feel, Jonathan. It's hard to ignore the connection we have." "It's the same for me," Jonathan confessed, his voice low. "But maybe we should." Before he could finish, Zara reached out, her hand gently touching his. "Maybe just this once, we could allow ourselves to forget the rules. Just tonight." Jonathan looked at her hand on his, the warmth spreading up his arm. He knew this was crossing a line, but his heart raced with anticipation. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. It was all the confirmation he needed. They leaned in simultaneously, their lips meeting in a kiss that was tentative at first but grew more urgent, more impassioned. As they pulled away, breathless, Jonathan felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. "Zara, are we really doing this?" "Tonight, there are no titles, no rules, just us," Zara replied, her voice filled with a mix of desire and determination. They spent the night discovering each other, their professional boundaries temporarily forgotten. It was a night of gentle touches and whispered words, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the lab. By morning, they both knew that things had irrevocably changed. As the first light of dawn crept into the lab, they dressed in silence, the gravity of their actions settling over them. They shared a look, one full of questions about the future, but also understanding. Whatever came next, this night would remain a profound connection between them. After their unexpected night together, Jonathan and Zara tried to resume their normal routines, but the memory of their closeness lingered palpably between them. The air was thick with unspoken words as they worked together to finalize the project. One evening, after a long session with the development team, Marco and Soren lingered in the lab, discussing the deployment phase. Jonathan was about to join them when Zara approached him quietly. "Jonathan, can we talk? In private?" Her voice was serious, her expression unreadable. "Of course," Jonathan replied, following her to a small conference room away from curious ears. Once inside, Zara turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "Last night? It shouldn't have happened, but I can't say I regret it." Jonathan felt a rush of relief mixed with anxiety. "Neither do I, Zara. But what does this mean for us? For our jobs?" Zara sighed, sitting down at the table. "I've been thinking about that all day. We crossed a line we can't uncross. But I believe we can handle this maturely. We need to ensure it doesn't affect our professionalism or the team." "You're right," Jonathan agreed, taking a seat opposite her. "We need to be careful. Maybe keeping some distance for a while." "Distance might help," Zara interrupted, nodding slowly. "But it won't change how I feel. Jonathan, I'm drawn to you in a way I can't fully explain." Jonathan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I feel the same, Zara. But we have to think about the bigger picture. Let's get through this project launch, and then we can figure out where we stand." Zara squeezed his hand gently before withdrawing hers. "Agreed. For now, we focus on the project. After that, we'll see." They returned to the lab, where Marco and Soren were deep in discussion over the integration of a new AI module. "Hey, guys," Jonathan said, forcing a smile as he and Zara joined them. "What's the latest?" "We're just debating whether to implement this module before the launch or in a later update," Marco explained, showing them the specs on his tablet. Soren chimed in. "It could enhance performance, but it might delay our timeline. We need a decisive call." Zara, back in her role as leader, took the tablet and reviewed the details. "Let's test it in a controlled environment first. If it performs well without bugs, we implement it now. Otherwise, we schedule it for the next phase." "Sounds like a plan," Jonathan agreed, relieved to dive into technical details and push aside personal complexities for the moment. As they worked together to set up the test, the synergy of their team felt stronger, their focus sharper. The test ran smoothly, and the AI module integrated seamlessly, boosting their confidence. "Great work, everyone," Zara announced, her voice filled with genuine pride. "This will make our product not just functional but exceptional." The team exchanged smiles and high fives, their camaraderie undiminished by the undercurrents between Jonathan and Zara. As they packed up to leave, Marco clapped Jonathan on the back. "See you at the launch tomorrow, hero. It's going to be epic." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Jonathan replied, his spirits lifted by their success. He glanced at Zara, who was talking to Soren. She caught his eye and smiled, a small, private smile that spoke volumes about the night they shared and the uncertain future ahead. As Jonathan left the lab, he felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The project launch was set to be a defining moment in his career and possibly his personal life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that the memories of that night would remain a beacon, guiding him through the complexities of love and work in the vast expanse of space. The launch of the communication device was a resounding success. Representatives from various species and sectors attended, praising the innovation and seamless integration of diverse technological needs. As the team gathered to celebrate, Jonathan felt a sense of accomplishment mingled with a complicated web of emotions toward Zara. Later, as the crowd thinned, Jonathan found himself standing beside Marco, watching Zara handle congratulations with grace and authority. "She's impressive, isn't she?" Marco commented, following Jonathan's gaze. "Absolutely," Jonathan agreed, his tone mixed with respect and a hint of personal admiration. "Look, man," Marco said, turning to face him with a serious look. "I know I've teased you before, but I genuinely hope things work out for you too, whatever things might be." Jonathan smiled wryly. "Thanks, Marco. We're trying to figure that out." As the celebration wound down, Zara approached Jonathan. "Could we go somewhere to talk? Privately?" "Of course," Jonathan replied, feeling a familiar flutter of anticipation. They excused themselves and found a quiet observation deck, away from the remaining guests. Zara took a deep breath, looking out at the starfield. "Jonathan, tonight was a testament to our hard work and collaboration. But we need to address what's happening between us. Jonathan nodded, his expression solemn. I've been thinking about that a lot. Zara, what we have, it's real and powerful. But it's also filled with potential complications. I know, Zara said softly. I've never allowed my personal feelings to interfere with my professional responsibilities. But with you, it's different. I find myself wanting to explore what's between us, despite the risks. Jonathan reached out, taking her hand. I feel the same. Maybe we should consider what it would mean to have a relationship, not just a fleeting connection. Zara squeezed his hand, a smile breaking through her earlier apprehension. I'd like that. But we should take some time, make sure it's what we both want, without the excitement of the project clouding our judgment. Agreed, Jonathan said. Maybe some distance for now, while we think things through. Distance sounds prudent, Zara agreed. But let's not wait too long. I don't want to lose this. Whatever this is. Neither do I, Jonathan assured her. They stood together, hands linked, watching the stars. It was a perfect, peaceful moment after the storm of activity the last few months had brought. The following week, with the project now in its post-launch phase, Jonathan and Zara maintained a professional but distant relationship. They communicated through emails and team meetings, never alone. During this time, Jonathan worked closely with Marco and Soren on refining the device's capabilities based on initial user feedback. The distance from Zara gave him space to think, but also reinforced how much he missed her personal interactions. One afternoon, as he and Marco were debugging a particularly stubborn piece of software, Marco looked over at him. You're doing the right thing, you know? Taking it slow. Jonathan nodded. Doesn't make it any easier, though. No, it doesn't, Marco agreed. But the best things in life seldom come easy. As the weeks turned into a month, Jonathan realized his feelings for Zara weren't waning. If anything, they were growing stronger. He knew a decision would have to be made soon, both for their personal happiness and to preserve the integrity of their professional environment. Finally, Jonathan decided it was time to revisit their conversation. He sent Zara a simple message, "Can we talk?" After work, perhaps at the observation deck. Her reply came quickly, affirmative. As Jonathan prepared for the meeting, he felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. Tonight could be the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that included Zara not just as a colleague, but as something more. As the space station's artificial sunset bathed the observation deck in hues of orange and purple, Jonathan waited for Zara, rehearsing what he wanted to say. His heart pounded with anticipation, each beat echoing his hopes for what might come after their conversation. Zara arrived, her stride confident yet her expression uncertain. She took a deep breath before speaking. "Jonathan, thank you for meeting me here. I've been doing a lot of thinking." Jonathan nodded, his nerves tightening. "So have I, Zara. These past weeks have been challenging without being able to talk openly with you. I've missed that." "I've missed it too," Zara admitted, moving closer. "I've realized something important. Whatever this is between us, it's worth exploring." Despite the challenges, relief and joy surged through Jonathan. "I feel the same way. I believe we can make this work, Zara, if we're careful and open with each other." Zara nodded. "I agree. We need to set some boundaries, though, for our professional interactions and our personal relationship. Can we agree on that?" "Absolutely," Jonathan replied. "We can keep our work interactions strictly professional and save personal conversations for our own time." "Good," Zara said, a smile finally breaking through her serious demeanor. "And we'll need to be transparent with HR at some point, to maintain integrity in our positions." Jonathan appreciated her practical approach. "When the time is right, we'll make it official. For now, we can take it slow, get to know each other outside of work." "That sounds perfect," Zara agreed, her eyes reflecting the station lights, shimmering with a mixture of excitement and relief. Just then, Marco appeared at the entrance of the deck. "Hey, you two. There's a gathering in the main hall. They're celebrating the project's success again." He laughed. "You coming?" Jonathan and Zara exchanged a look, their private moment gently interrupted. "We'll be right there," Jonathan called back, and Marco nodded, disappearing back into the corridor. Turning to Zara, Jonathan extended his arm. Shall we? We shall, Zara replied, taking his arm. As they walked towards the main hall, Jonathan felt a sense of completeness. The challenges ahead didn't seem so daunting with Zara by his side. At the celebration, the atmosphere was lively, with crew and staff from various departments mingling and laughing. Jonathan and Zara joined Marco and Soren, keeping their interactions light and friendly. As the evening progressed, Jonathan felt a profound sense of contentment. He caught Zara's glance from across the room, her smile telling him all he needed to know. They had found something special, a promising beginning amidst the stars. Later, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, Jonathan and Zara stepped out onto a quiet balcony overlooking the vastness of space. The stars stretched endlessly, a backdrop to their new beginning. "Look at that view," Zara whispered, leaning against the railing. "It makes you realize how small our problems are in the grand scheme of things." Jonathan joined her, admiring the view. "It does. But it also makes me grateful for what we have here, now." Zara turned to him, her hand finding his. "Me too, Jonathan. No matter what the future holds, I'm glad we're in this together." "So am I, Zara." "So am I," Jonathan replied, squeezing her hand. Together, they watched the stars, their hearts aligned with the possibilities of the future, ready to navigate whatever came their way with unity and love.